Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are at the start of July 2044, and the Pirates are having a good year. We are second in the NL Central, 52-38 record, 4 games behind the Cardinals, in the driver's seat for the NL wild card at this point. Has been a bit of a slow start for the team, quite honestly. Got off to a really bad start in March and early April. 2-5 in March, and we were 500 in April, but most of those wins came in the back half of the month, and then caught fire in May and played well in June. Pitching is kind of where we'd want it. We're 4th in the league in runs allowed overall. The batting is a little disappointing, 12th in the NL in runs scored, and we are in a rare and happy situation, definitely significantly outperforming our Pythagorean expectations based on our runs scored and our runs allowed. So the hope is that we will be better in the second half of the year, hopefully hold on to that number 1 wild card spot so we get a home wild card series at the very least, and perhaps make up some ground on the Cardinals and give them a run in this division that they've dominated for the past several seasons. Thinking about our team, pretty happy with our pitching, as we talked about at the end of last episode. Eventually, Omar Gaona, man, back up in the pen. In a perfect world, we'd like Bobby Gonzalez to be a fourth or fifth starter at this point in his career rather than a number 3 starter. And we do have a lot of talented starting pitchers down in AAA just waiting for their chance. So feel like we've got the arms and don't need to do a lot there. As far as our lineup, second base and third base are both spots where I think we could make an upgrade. We were just about to turn things over to Ethan Fox to become our everyday third baseman, but we are in a situation where we've got a lot of money to take on some salary, which is a rare situation for us to be in. The reason we have that is we didn't really do much of anything this past off season except make poor decisions. So we do have the ability to take on some contracts. And when I look at the trade market, there are actually second basemen and third basemen out there. When you look at the top batters around, there's a lot of options at second base and third base. And then there's also our old friend Alex Vasquez, who we tried to trade for in the offseason and failed at acquiring. So there's potential to do something here. I do feel a little bad that if we go with a third baseman, that's kind of taken the position away from Fox before he really gets a chance. But I think any of these players, but particularly 39-year-old Alex Palacio and 38-year-old Mike Augustini, are just going to be one-year rentals. And they're both wrecked physically, which is obviously not optimal, but going to start spending a little time trying to figure out who's out there and whether there's any move that we can make that will help us improve at second base or third base. And honestly, right now, I wouldn't have said that first base was a big hole, but with the move of our starting first baseman, Luis Flores, to the 60-day IL a little over a week ago when he suffered a ruptured MCL. Right now, Alfredo Velasquez is playing first base for us, but we could certainly use a bat to be a first baseman or a DH also, which could help us. So I think in terms of what we may try to add here as we think about the next 4+ weeks till the trade deadline is potentially someone who can help us in the infield. And I think we've got a trade together that could help us. Jaden Dixon, you may remember until we recently, at the end of the last episode, made the potential move to force start Ethan Fox at third base, has been our starting third baseman for the last few seasons. Really kind of was hoping that he would be a utility infielder for us, but he's been kind of pushed into a starting role and hasn't been all that productive offensively. Love his glove, good personality, love the durability, just not a great hitter. So we'd have to give him up, as well as Andy Silva, who's a 19-year-old marginal prospect. Don't love the personality. Don't think he's ever going to be a big-time player. And we could get Alex Palacio from the Giants and get them to retain a big chunk of his salary. Palacio is a 5-time National League MVP. He's 39 years old, going to be 40 in a little over 2 weeks, making a ton of money in the last year of his contract. He's wrecked physically, but he still has a pretty good bat, and importantly, he's got a great eye. So he's going to generate some walks. The fans love him. I don't know that I want to play him at third base, but I think as a DH, that kind of saves us from his mediocre-ish glove. And it also may prevent some wear and tear on his wrecked body. He is extremely popular. I know you're going to be wondering about that since I talk about it so much. So we'll probably get a boost from bringing him on board, and then a boost when he leaves in the off season. But we can live with that. He's only hitting .236 this year, but he still has 16 doubles and 12 homers and 284 at bats. So still has a little pop in the bat. And last year he hit .306 with 39 homers and 113 ribbies. You look, and this is, I'm sure one of the most decorated players in this entire playthrough. So he's had a brilliant career, and we need a little bit of instant offense. In a worst case scenario, we can play him at third base, but right now I think we may give that role to Fox for the time being and kind of force Palacio to be our designated hitter, which hopefully will help ensure that we can keep him healthy, and maybe he's a bat that can help us with in the playoffs. With the amount that the Giants are going to retain, we're still going to have a little bit of money to potentially spend. So I don't think I'm going to go around and wait till the deadline. I think I'm going to make this move right now, move on from Dixon, and add a better bat to our lineup, which could use some help. So we're going to go ahead and complete the trade. I am assuming that the fans will be very excited about Palacio's arrival. Yes, but we know that they'll be very disappointed when he leaves us next year. But whoa, we got a 10-point bump in fan interest from bringing him on board. So one thing I am going to track is the 10-point bump from him coming on board, kind of wondering what it's going to look like when he leaves us next year. Hopefully it's not worse than that. I think that's about as high as it can get. I can't recall ever seeing anything more positive than 10. But certainly a negative 10 this coming off season is not going to be optimal. But that 10-point bump in fan interest and the good baseball that we've been playing over the last 2.5 months will hopefully really help us sell a lot more tickets over the next few months. And the hope, obviously, is also that bringing a 5-time MVP on board in the case of Palacio is going to really help our roster also. For a second, I'm going to take Ethan Fox out of being force started and just see what the manager would want to do. And he would still keep Ethan Fox at third base against righties. He would play Palacio at third base against lefties, and then Palacio at DH. I think I'm okay with that. We'll have the better glove Fox out there more often when we're facing right-handed pitchers. We'll give Palacio a fair amount of time to rest, DHing against righties, but still playing them on occasion. I think I'm okay with that. I am going to change his strategy settings. I'm guessing they're all neutral right now, so I'm going to update his strategy settings. And we're also going to be really conservative with him. If he gets below 95% fatigued, we are going to get him on the bench and try to baby this wrecked future Hall of Famer through the rest of this season and hopefully a playoff run with the Pirates. So we've got an MVP on board. We've got a big bat to hopefully help get our lineup moving in a better direction. One of our owner goals also involved third base. I don't care about the owner goals all that much, but certainly would think it would be an upgrade to be moving on from Dixon to Palacio if he gets the credit for it, or Ethan Fox. Again, that's not a big goal of ours, but if we can keep Mr. Nutting happy, we'll do the best we can to do that. So we're closing in on the All-Star game. Will be interesting to see how many All-Stars the Pirates have this year. Not having a ton of exceptional individual performances, so probably won't have quite as many All-Stars as we've had in some recent seasons, even though we have a really good record. And we're only about a week and a half away from the amateur draft. We made an offer to an international amateur free agent, Luis Ibarra, the best player out there, earlier today. So a lot going on for the Pirates, and we'll see if the addition of a future Hall of Famer can help jumpstart this lineup and help us improve from 12th in the league in scoring to something materially higher than that. And I'm a little bit surprised Luis Ibarra signed with us. So we got the top prospect among international amateur free agents in all of baseball. I think he could be a real interesting third baseman down the line for us. Kind of coincidental. We were just talking about our third base position. Probably 5, 6, 7 years till he may be ready. But very pleased to have him on board. And the All-Star Game rosters have been announced. Let's see what we've got for the Pirates. Luis Longoria, the starting pitcher, only 3 wins, but with the 147 strikeouts and 3.61 ERA over 104 2/3 innings. Our fragile superstar is rewarded, and yeah, that is his first All-Star nod here in 2044. Tony Santana, our co-ace along with Longoria, the defending National League Cy Young Award winner, also struggling in the win-loss department with a 6-7 record, but a very solid 3.65 ERA over 113 1/3 innings. So 2 starting pitchers, and then Ethan Mingo, the reliever that we brought on in a trade with Texas last offseason. Brilliant 1.70 ERA and 60 strikeouts over 47 2/3 innings. So his first All-Star appearance as a middle reliever here in 2044. Taking a look at the position players. Alex Palacio, who we just brought on board. Hey, it does count as a All-Star for the Pirates. You can see he's off to a great start, 3 for 5 with 5 runs batted in his first 2 games with us. So hopefully the change of scenery will be good for him. And Isaiah Hill and Henry Gonzalez, the 2 young outfielders, Isaiah Hill and Henry Gonzalez, both previous Rookies of the Year for us. Gonzalez last year and Isaiah Hill back in 2039. Both also named to the All-Star team also. So a little surprised. 6 All-Stars is more than I would have guessed. But both Isaiah Hill and Henry Gonzalez continue the streaks of having been named an All-Star every year that they've been in the major leagues. And just had an achievement that we've never had before in this playthrough. Isaiah Hill, the All-Star MVP. So he adds a nice award to his storied career. 1 for 3 in the game, but in a 7-0 victory, Isaiah Hill continues his brilliant play. You can see well, you can't see it exactly, but he's been up 6 years, 6-time All-Star, 4-time Silver Slugger, Rookie of the Year, and a 2-time Most Valuable Player, including his Rookie of the Year season. So his contract is getting to the point where it's going to get unwieldy. This year that we've got him at $18 million was his last arbitration eligible year, and that was several $1,000,000 below what we thought we'd be having to pay him back when we signed him to that contract. But the numbers are going to start getting quite imposing down the line, so it's going to be pretty important to us to be able to improve the budget. And hopefully the addition of Mr. Palacio will help with that. You can see we have been selling out more recently, so hopefully that'll help a little bit on the financial end. Kind of interesting that the big spark in fan interest we got from bringing Palacio on board already seems to be falling back a bit. A little bit of excitement when the 5-time MVP initially joined us, but it seems like maybe it's not going to translate into fans consistently showing up, which is disappointing, but it is what it is. And we kind of have continued to have more injuries than we've been used to over the last few years of this playthrough this season. The Rule 5 acquisition, Arturo Arellano, who we've brought right from high A ball to the majors, and he's holding his own with a .263 average, 19 doubles, 7 homers, and 262 at-bats. Going to be getting less playing time now that Alex Ruacho is back, but certainly not good that we're going to be without him for 3 to 4 weeks, so we'll place him on the IL. The interesting thing is we've got, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, a lot of potential pitching depth in AAA. And the pitchers haven't been where we've been having our injuries this year. It's been more the everyday players. Flores, as we talked about, out for the year. And then center fielders Arellano and Herrera, who was our starter at the end of the season, both out for the time being. We'll hope that Herrera's unknown injury time to that hamstring strain that was only supposed to keep him out for about 2 months doesn't linger for too much longer. And to replace Arellano, we're going to bring up 24-year-old outfielder Danny Loya. Not as big an outfield prospect as some in our system, but still looks like he might be a respectable bat. Got a good personality. He spent the last year and a half in AAA. Has been good, but not great there. Batting about .280 with some decent power, but not exceptional power this year. But take a look at what he can do as a backup outfielder for us over the next few weeks. And we've made it to the amateur draft. You can see we haven't been playing as well so far in July. We're now 8 games back, which is definitely not optimal. Still in the number 1 wild card spot, which would be an improvement for us to be playing a home wild card series rather than a road wild card series. But would obviously love to finally get past the Cardinals, because if we can do that, that would likely mean a first-round bye, which would be huge. Can see not playing well, 3-7 over our last 10, lost 2 in a row. But we've now got the opportunity to add some talent for the future. We're not going to be picking till 30th in the draft after a pretty solid season last year, but hopefully we can add somebody who's going to be a long-time contributor for this Pirates organization, even though we're not picking till the 30th pick, which is right after our old team in Kansas City, interestingly. And we've simmed ahead to our 30th pick in the draft. See, there's a decent number of, at least according to the sometimes volatile and sometimes misleading star rankings, handful of top prospects still available. Tony Arce, it's like a potentially interesting bat. He's a second baseman, but you wouldn't feel good playing him at second base. So he's really more of a first baseman at 6'4" slash very mediocre left fielder. But certainly does have a bat, does have some durability. Not looking for a ton of money for a first round pick. Has a little bit of speed. Not a horrible prospect. I'd hope we could do a little better at number 30. But Aaron Hill, a young catcher, oof. That glove is brutal. The bat is not bad, but would never want to play somebody with that glove at catcher. And could play him at first base, and that's about it. So I like Arce better than him. Brandon Ham, another catching prospect, a little more average defensively. Looks like he could have a average-ish major league bat if he completely develops. Not all that exciting. If he was better defensively, if he was a plus defensive catcher, might think about taking him, but not that interesting to me. Gary Jones, left fielder, don't love the low work ethic. Looks like he could have a decent bat with a little bit of pop and a pretty good eye. So if everything completely develops, certainly looks like a guy who could hit 30 homers and walk 80 plus times a year, which are both important things. Looks like he could play left or right field, but not the greatest prospect in the world. Also 19 years old. Josh Nicholson, another older prospect coming out of Auburn. Like the durability, hate the personality. Pretty interesting bat, quite honestly, with that contact and gap power, excellent speed, an acceptable home run power eye, not going to strike out very much. He's an interesting bat that could certainly be helping us at the major league level, or helping whoever picks him at the major league level in the not so distant future. Not great defensively, and that personality is definitely a turnoff for me. And then there's also Chance Tatum, a shortstop, really more of a second or third baseman, and with that error rating, you don't love him at second, and with that only slightly above average arm, you don't love him at third. At least I don't. Is durable, has some speed, looks like a decent bat without much power. So honestly, I like Arce the best of those batting prospects, but I'm not in love with him, so hoping that there's some interesting pitchers to look at, and it does look like there are definitely some interesting pitchers for us to spend some time on next. And taking a look at the pitchers, Jesus Ibarra, oof, wow. That is a pretty good pitching prospect. He's looking for $11 million, so that is the challenge here. But he's durable, got acceptable stamina, high leadership, ground ball pitcher, already throwing in the low to mid 90s at the age of 17, and certainly profiles as having plus stuff, movement, and control, and a potential 5-pitch repertoire. So would be pretty surprising if he didn't develop at least 3 of them, and probably 4 of them to major league plus levels. So he's a really interesting prospect. We haven't set a ton of money. You can see we've got just over $11 million right now, and unfortunately that actually includes the money that we potentially would use to be taken on some contracts, because we only have $8 million set aside in our draft budget. So if we were to decide to go with Mr. Ibarra, that's the draft for us. Then we got to just find players who are going to basically sign for nothing the rest of the way. But a very interesting prospect. Sadly, the reason he's probably dropped to us is that other teams have done the financial math and realized that they don't have the funds to bring him on board. But he is certainly the prospect that I am most interested in at this point. Maybe there's a somewhat more affordable version of him around. Willie Ramos, not bad. I mean, he's looking for a more reasonable amount. That's still going to be over slot here at number 30 in the draft. Like the work ethic. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher who doesn't throw quite as hard. Certainly looks like he could develop 3+ major league pitches, including a pretty devastating curve. Doesn't seem like that changeup's going to do much of anything, but a interesting prospect. Oscar Vasquez, a reliever. Don't see us taking a reliever in the first round. Jose Andrade. Probably ends up being a reliever unless that changeup develops better than we think it can. So, again, probably not someone I'm going to chase in the first round. Ricky Broad, another reliever, college student from Texas State. So he could be up in the majors in not long at all. Sergio Brown, starting pitching prospect, Oregon State, good personality, great stamina. Looks like he could be a decent hitter. Not a hitter that I'd draft in the first round, but he does have and he's got catcher ability. All right, well, now we're starting to get interesting here with this guy. As a pitcher, he's a decent prospect. I love the fact that he's potentially got a 6-pitch arsenal. But he's most likely a 4th or 5th starter if everything works out. But he's got that great personality. And although when I first looked at his potential batting ratings, I wasn't all that excited about them, when I looked and I saw he can potentially be a catcher, he just got a lot more interesting. Good defensive catcher, not great, but plus catcher ability and even a slightly above average arm with a potentially decent bat. He's got home run power. He's going to walk an average amount. He's intriguing to me, but more so as a catcher than anything else. Dave Knox, starting pitcher, like the durability, 3-pitch guy, but still could be a solid major league starter. Looking for slot money, so a lot more reasonable there. And then Jerry Saldana, closer, older pitcher out of Purdue who could definitely be in the majors in the not so distant future. So I love Ibarra, but we bring him on board, and unless we trade away an expensive player at the major league level, we're not going to be able to sign many of the other players that we draft. I just don't think we can afford it this year, even though I really like him. So to me, do we pick Sergio Brown and turn him into a catcher? He's got a good personality, high adaptability, high work ethic. Feel like he could make that transition. I mean, he's listed as a catcher right here. We liked Willie Ramos. Jose Andrade was a reliever. I felt like there was another. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe it was Willie Ramos, and at $7 million, that's not that interesting to me. But you compare Sergio Brown to these other catchers, and better overall personality, better defensively, and a bat that's potentially similar-ish to Aaron Hill. better than Braden Ham with potentially 10 points better catcher ability. Tony Arce. I like the bat. I really do. I like the durability. But he's a first baseman or a corner outfielder. And he's a bad left fielder if you play him as a corner outfielder. I just don't think that bat is so exceptional that we take him. Just going to do a quick search on batting potential and see if there's anybody out there that we haven't looked at who just jumps off the page. Arce looks like, in terms of broad potential, probably one of the top prospects. Josh Nicholson. Yeah, the personality just bothers me a little bit. But he's obviously a pretty good prospect too. Danny Aguiar, the center fielder here. Looks like he could be a decent hitter, but not great. Jesus Pinedo. That's not a bad profile. Kind of like him as much as I kind of like anybody. Almost 19 years old. Only looking for slot. Looks like he could be above average contact hitter with some gap power, some decent speed to generate some extra base hits and a little bit of home run power. Not the best error rating for the outfield, but good range and a really good arm. He's not a horrible prospect. Ricky Robles. Not a shortstop, but similarly looks like a guy who could be slapping extra base hits all around the field. Not the best eye in the world. Definitely not going to draw any walks being such a free swinger, but I don't see anyone there that has me more interested. Oscar Vasquez, who we talked about, is a reliever. I'm just not going to take a reliever, but certainly his pitching profile is pretty strong, as are Broud, who we talked about, and Ramos, who we also talked about. I like all these guys, but honestly, I am most intrigued by converting Sergio Brown to a catcher. He's plus defensively and certainly looks like he's going to have an acceptable major league bat. He's slow. He doesn't know how to bunt, but he's a catcher. Generally, you're not going to get big numbers on any of those ratings for a catcher, but to me, he profiles as a guy who, if he develops, could be a starting catcher for your team for a decade, probably make a couple all-star teams. And his chance of success at his age is probably pretty good. I mean, I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but I also think his bust potential is probably fairly low. He's only looking for slot. He's been facing great competition. Granted, he has been pitching rather than batting, and we're thinking about making a dramatic change with him. But I like Sergio Brown. We are going to go ahead. Oh, I guess I should just see before doing that, what does our scout recommend? Want to make sure we make Jordan Cavanerio feel valued for his contributions. And he recommends the pitcher Ibarra. I just don't think we can afford him. You look at the money. That leaves us $92,860 if we meet his bonus demand to sign players from the next 19 rounds. Obviously, it's only going to make a difference with the players over the next few rounds, and then if we drafted in the late rounds someone who was looking for some crazy money, otherwise we'll at least get rounds 6 through 20 signed pretty straightforwardly. But I don't think, it sabotages the next 4 rounds of the draft for us, is what it does. But he is such a good pitching prospect. He's durable. I just don't think we can afford him. It's depressing to let a pitcher like that slide out of my hands, but we bring him on board, and then we probably can't sign the next 4 guys that we draft, literally. And penny pinching Bob Nutting probably isn't going to give us any flexibility once we've blown through the budget. And we are a team that's playing to win this year, so I don't just want to go back to the major league roster and dump some salary on somebody for nothing. I'd love to have Jesus Ibarra, but we're going to take a different route, and we're going to draft Sergio Brown to become a catcher for us. Would love to hear the opinions of the first round and what we did from anyone who's still watching at this point down in the comments. Are we crazy to let Ibarra go? Is it something we had to do because of the money? Are we nuts picking up a starting pitcher and thinking we can turn him into our starting catcher? And would you have just gone in a completely different direction? Love to know what you're thinking. And still a handful of the top prospects that we talked about last round here for us in the second round, but it's a catcher that we didn't love and 3 guys who are going to be relief pitchers. Scouting director recommends we go with the catcher, Brandon Ham. I guess he hasn't gotten the memo that we picked a catcher that we liked more than Ham in the first round. So I think we're going to go in a different direction than what Mr. Cavanario recommends. And I think we're going to go to a bat. When I looked at potential batting ratings, Danny Aguilar is probably the most well-balanced player out there at this point. Not great defensively, but not horrible as a defensive outfielder. Can also play first base. Wouldn't really want to play him anywhere else in the infield. He's got some speed, a decent personality. He's durable, and looks like he could be a acceptable major league bat. So he's not that exciting. Realistically, he's probably a 4th outfielder on a good team. So I don't love picking him. Ricky Robles, if he was signable, would be who I would definitely go with. I think I mentioned him last round, but I hadn't noticed that his signability is impossible. He's going to Vanderbilt, so his bonus demand is going to be $15 million or something wacky that we absolutely cannot afford, or I would think about him. Center fielder David Grabowski, like the durability, like his defensive expertise, like his speed. Just don't love the bat. I think he's going to struggle to hit enough to be someone you'd want in the lineup at the major league level, even as a very good defensive center fielder. Maybe that's being a little too harsh. I'll maybe correct myself. That outfield range definitely is exceptional, with a real good error rating and a good arm rating. So if he fully develops, he would be a pretty useful major league player. I'm actually starting to think that I might go with Grabowski over Aguilar if I do go with a center fielder, or if I do go with a position player. But going to take another look through the pitchers just because I don't love either of those prospects. There are some interesting starting pitching prospects out there. Jose Enciso, like the personality. Looks like he could be a back of the rotation starter potentially. A lot of these guys kind of similar. Arturo Edwards, if he completely develops, he could be a 5, maybe a 4 in a good situation. Jim Conley, same thing with like a little better movement, but if everything works out for him, he's durable. He can go a lot of innings. Not a bad 5th starter. Alex Brown, same thing. Control is his area where he doesn't jump off the page, and you don't love his personality, but he's durable. Stamina, great at holding runners. Potentially is a nice 4-pitch arsenal. More likely a 3-pitch arsenal, but I'm guessing there'll be somebody that looks like these guys or similar left in the 3rd round if we do want to pivot to a starting pitching prospect. I'm not so confident that it would help if I would look at batters at this point. I'm not so confident that David Grabowski's going to be there. And as I've talked about, I don't love the bat. But I really like the glove. I like the personality. I like the durability. I really like the speed. Decent base runner. Not going to steal a ton of bases or not be incredibly efficient at stealing bases, probably more accurately. If everything develops according to plan, or according to your hopes, I think he's a guy who can be your starting center fielder with that glove and a bat that's not going to hurt you too badly for many years. I just find him more interesting than Aguilar, although Aguilar's bat is a little bit better, potentially plus contact, gap power, and home run power, but not exceptional at any of those things. The glove just not as good. I don't have a real strong opinion on this one, but I also don't want to spend my life thinking about it either. We're going to go with Grabowski. I just got a feeling with this guy. So we're going to draft Grabowski, hopefully move on to the 3rd round. And Robles is still there because no one wants to get anywhere near that contract. Aguilar is actually still here, so there's a chance we go with him. But before making that decision, let's see who's available in terms of pitchers at this point. And there are still guys who can be a number 5 starter around. Whether they'll be there in the 4th round, who knows? But I think there's still a few prospects here that I think could be a decent 5th starter. Scout is still telling us to take Brandon Ham. Honestly, if he's around in a couple rounds, I might double back on the catcher. But at this point, the guy that I was close to taking in the 2nd round still being there, kind of intrigues me. I don't love Aguilar, but I think he's decent value for a late 3rd round pick. So we're going to go ahead and go back-to-back center fielders here in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Move on to the 4th round, and Ricky Robles still there. No one wants to even waste a pick on him, knowing that he's going to Vanderbilt, and he's impossible to sign unless you've got gobs of money to throw at him. And we still got Jose Enciso here, who's been the guy that we've been most intrigued with. Like the personality. I think he can definitely be a 5th starter. He's going to need that changeup or that slider to develop to really be a starting pitcher, which is probably why he's still lingering here. Marco Pettis isn't a bad prospect either. He's durable, high work ethic. His stuff is just so pedestrian, even if it completely develops in terms of a major league pitcher. The control you're going to love, but with average stuff and below average movement, I just don't see him being a big time pitcher. Check in with the scouting director. He recommends we go with Arturo Morales. Not a bad hitting prospect. Don't love the personality. Not a lot of speed. Not that great defensively. We've already got a couple of outfielders we brought on board. And Ciso is definitely not a clean pitching prospect because the changeup just doesn't always develop. And if the changeup doesn't develop and that slider doesn't end up being a lot better than we think it's going to be, you've got yourself a reliever. OSA doesn't really view him much differently than we do, but here in the fourth round, there's just not a lot of guys left who could actually be a functional starting pitcher at the major league level. Yeah, I just looked through again while I was paused, and there's really nobody else. He might not become a starter, but he's the only guy left that I can see who, if everything works out, could be a functional major league starter. So from that perspective, I think I'm going to take Enciso. I'd love it if Jerry Saldana fell to the fifth round. He's the guy out of Purdue, 21 years old. You know, looks like a guy who could definitely be helping a major league bullpen in not all that long. He's a left-handed pitcher who honestly doesn't look like he's much better against lefties than he is against righties at this point, but would love to be able to get him in the fifth round, and I think there's certainly an argument to take him in the fourth round because he's a pretty clean prospect. You're going to get a solid major league reliever with almost 100% certainty, I think, picking him. But I think you got to go with the potential upside of a guy who could be a starting pitcher. So we're going to pick Enciso here, and we're going to hope Saldana's still on the board for our fifth round pick. I'm guessing he won't be. Yep, he's gone. And here in the fifth round, the scouting director recommends we go with Justin Seward, starting pitcher out of Don Bosco Prep. Don't hate him. For a fifth round pick, 18-year-old who's durable, throwing in the mid-90s. His control might be an issue, but he does potentially have a 5-pitch arsenal. I'm not going to overthink this. I'm going to go ahead and follow the scout's recommendation for once and try to sign Justin Seward here as our fifth round draft choice. And moving on to the sixth, another starting pitcher, Dave Hanger. He's more of a reliever, almost certainly a reliever, but not a horrible prospect. But getting to the point where the prospects are much more interesting, so I won't subject you to my musings on them any further. Well, we're through the draft and we're closing in on mid-July, and the Pirates definitely been struggling here over the past month. You can see we're 10 games behind now, so steadily slipping behind the Cardinals in the division, and our lead in the wild card is also slipping with 5 losses in a row and a 2-8 record over our last 10. So that is definitely not optimal. Also have a minor injury here. Ethan Mingo going to be banged up with shoulder tendonitis for 1 week. We're going to be conservative and put him on the IL, as we've talked about. We've got a lot of AAA pitchers that we'd like to see at the major league level, so it's just a matter of figuring out which one of our potential young big-time pitchers to promote. And we're going to promote Sal Valadez, who we picked in the second round of 2038, our first draft with the team. Hasn't been great in AAA this year. You can see 7-6 record, 4.15 ERA, and 94 strikeouts over 117 innings. But he's 23 years old. I think it's time to kind of see what he can do at the major league level. Probably not going to be up for the long term. It's possible that he will get slotted into the rotation, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Nope, looks like he's just going to be pitching out a long relief, which is also fine. Get to take a look at him for the next couple of weeks. Hopefully Mingo, who was a first-time All-Star this year, won't be too banged up. The shoulder tendonitis is really just supposed to be an issue for a week, so we could have tried to push through it, but because it does have a moderate impact on his throwing, that probably wasn't the best idea. And also didn't want to bench him for a week and be down to 11 pitchers. So I think it makes sense to give him as much time possible to heal up, and we'll get a first look at Valadez. And another injury, Alex Racho, the rookie, back strain, out for a week. We're going to put him on the 10-day IL just to be as careful as possible. But you can see our three center fielders are all on the IL at this point. So we'll dip down into AAA. Don't have great options there, quite honestly. I think we'll just bring Juarez back up. And I would assume that Henry Gonzalez will probably slide over to right, but let's see what the manager wants to do. No, he wants to put Juarez in center. And I think Juarez is actually decent defensively, so that's fine. That makes sense. It's been rough, though. The Pirates are not playing well. We have gotten the deficit down to 8 games, but that's really more that St. Louis has lost 3 in a row. We have won 2 in a row, but month of July has not been kind to the Pirates as far as our 1-loss record, unfortunately. Taking a look at how we've done thus far, 4-7 record. Obviously had the All-Star break in there. We are up to 10th in runs scored, but we've slipped back to 6th in runs allowed, and our starters ERA of 4.61 is second to last in the National League. That's shocking, given how good I expect our starting rotation to be. But you can see that Santana looks like he's gotten roughed up a couple of times since the All-Star break, potentially. And even Longoria's ERA is approaching 4 at this point. So just haven't gotten the really good pitching that we've been used to over the past few years. Part of it could be our defense. It's an area that we've, I think, invested in and focused on, but clearly not showing up this season. We have moved on from a few good defensive players over the past couple of seasons, notably this past off season, our longtime second baseman Serrano, who we let go. And we've tried to replace him with Rivera, who's respectable defensively, but not feeling great about the team right now. We've got another 2 weeks until we get to the trade deadline, so we've got plenty of time to figure out what we may or may not want to do. But definitely feels like in July things are not going particularly well. Check in on how Palacio is doing, and that's not going particularly well either. You may remember that 2 games into his career with us, he had 5 runs batted in, and now 11 games into his career with us, he still has 5 runs batted in and is hitting just $167. He is walking a lot with 12 walks in 11 games. So he's getting on base, but would certainly hope to be getting somewhat more offense from a player with his resume. And a good piece of news, our starting center fielder, Ramon Herrera, ready to come off the IL. He's been out since April, though, so we are going to actually send him on a rehab assignment for a couple of days at least. That could mean the end of Juarez or Loya or Valladares at the major league level, but not the worst thing in the world that we start getting some of our outfielders who we expected to have on the major league roster back. And we've got Herrera back in the outfield now, which is positive, and Alex Racho is ready to play. Now that Herrera's back, he wouldn't be getting regular playing time at the major league level. And he hasn't been so good there with a .258 average and 4 homers and 89 at-bats that we feel we have to send him back up right now. So we're actually going to demote him to AAA for the time being. I would assume that he will be a September call-up for us in a little over a month. And certainly if we have some other injuries, we'll consider bringing him back, but want to make sure that he's getting action every day. And with Hill, Herrera, and Gonzalez across our outfield, and Velasquez at first and Palacio at DH most days, just don't feel like there's consistent at-bats for him in the majors right now. And as we close in on the trade deadline, Pirates playing a little better over the last couple of weeks. We've got about $2 million to potentially add free agents, so still an opportunity for us to do something. I don't know that we need to do something that dramatic. Clearly bringing on a 5-time MVP in Palacio is a big step in the right direction, but you can see we've been playing better. We've got the winning percentage up to .590 in the month of July. We're up to 8th in runs scored. It's 6th in runs allowed, which is still worse than we'd want to be. It's weird that our starting pitching is so bad, but we've definitely been outperforming our Pythagorean record, and I think our defense is not helping us there. So that may be something we want to focus on a bit in the off season, but I just don't know that we're going to be able to completely reshuffle the defense without potentially damaging our offense at this point in the season. So we're going to take a look through who's available on the trade market, maybe do another deal or two if we can get somebody at a reasonable price, but I'm just not confident that we're going to come up with anything that really is interesting to us. The good news is we're now 7.5 up on the wild card, and we're 5.5 up on the Rockies for the number 4 seed in the National League in a home playoff series. Still would obviously love to catch the Cardinals. We're 7.5 behind, and although we've been playing well, they've been playing really well lately also, and they've got the best record in the National League at 72-39. We're actually 3rd in the NL right now, behind only the Cardinals and the Padres with our 65 wins. And Ethan Mingo is now fully healthy from his trip on the IL. Sal Valadez has actually pitched pretty well. 6 games. He's picked up a couple of wins pitching out of the bullpen. 2.70 ERA over 10 innings. So good to see. But I think we're still going to send him back to AAA, which won't make him happy. Bring Mingo back up. Just our pitching staff. Just don't have a lot of guys that are struggling in the bullpen, and Valadez was not in the rotation. Montoya, interestingly, still just isn't really developing that slider the way that we'd like it to. I mean, it's an acceptable major league pitch, but would love it if it was a little better. But he somehow at the major league level and even at the minor league level has managed to put up a winning record. So he's pitching good enough to win. But that 5.45 ERA is definitely not what we were expecting from a guy that we traded away one of the top prospects in baseball for. I don't think we're going to end up doing anything at the trade deadline, but we are going to check in on a couple of our former Royals players. Vinny Tomei, you may remember, he's a first baseman that we traded away many years ago at this point to Arizona. I think that was bringing a pretty good pitcher on board. No, that was for Jacob Guerrero, who was kind of I believe, a 1 year rental for us. Yeah, we had another outfielder that got hurt for the season in spring training. I forget who it was, and Guerrero had a really nice year for us, but that was a 1 year rental. And obviously, Vinny Tomei has gone on to have a pretty good career with Arizona, led the league in doubles 5 straight years, been a pretty productive offensive player. Part of the reason we got rid of him was that he was not that great defensively, but still looks like he has a respectable bat at this point. And then Alex Vasquez, who we were trying to trade for last offseason, also has a decent bat at this point, at least looking at his ratings, but clearly is not the same offensive player that he used to be. But if we could get either of these kind of proven major league bats for little or nothing and not take on a lot of money, I would do it. But I'm certainly not going to chase after either of these players in terms of making an offer for them. In a best case scenario, they're a nice bat off our bench that plays, left field or first base once or twice a week for us when somebody needs a rest. And the good news is that we can basically get either player for just about nothing. So we do have potential to bring them on. I think I just got to give a little more thought to who we'd prefer out of the two of them. Tomei is definitely better defensively, I think, at first base. Can't really play the outfield at this point. Both of these guys are kind of first base / DHs. In the case of Vasquez, he actually has played outfield for a good part of his career at this point, but he's functional out there. The range bothers you a bit. And then infield-wise, you don't even love playing him at first base anymore. So he's really more of a DH at this point. With the good eye and the fact he's walked 58 times, he's still putting up a 128 OPS plus and a 130 WRC plus this year. So it'd certainly not be a bad pinch hitter to have coming off of the bench. And then in the case of Tomei, he's been kind of more of a league average offensive player this year. Not quite as versatile defensively since you can really only play him at first. But he is durable, which is nice. They're both extremely popular, so we'll get the popularity bump for a couple of months until they leave us. But that's not the main rationale for this trade. I think the rationale for this trade is going to be to take a look at our lineup and figure out, Sean Barley. He's hitting 261. He does have better power than he's ever had as far as home runs, with 7 homers and 119 at-bats for us. But he also brings nothing to the table defensively. No speed, and is not a good hitter as those guys. If we could flip Barley for something and bring on one of those players, it would absolutely make sense to do. And the question is whether we'd want to bring on 2 of them and then get rid of a Juarez or a Valladares. Juarez, I like the glove. He's been fine, hitting 258 at the major league level. Valladares is a little less interesting, a minor league free agent signing. Honestly, I'd be willing to send him to the minors, and we could bring both of those guys on for not really giving up much of anything in terms of prospects. I'm going to see what we can get for Barley. Probably not very much. I guess very little in terms of prospects for him at this point, even though he was a NL Rookie of the Year just a couple years ago. He had nothing. Maybe we just try to sneak him through waivers. But we could definitely open up roster spots for both of those players and improve our offense a little bit and improve our bench a little bit. And we're not just trying to make the playoffs. We wanna make a run with this team, and we don't have to give up much to bring on those two guys. And I think that they are better than Barley and better than Valadares. So I think it makes sense to try to bring them both on board. And the Angels will keep all of the remainder of Vasquez's contract over the last couple months of the season. And he'll be a free agent after this year. And you look at his batting profile and the fact he can play 3 positions. And he's better than our guy Sean Barley, who I was just talking about, who admittedly is younger, but only plays a mediocre first base. And then we don't have to worry about getting Barley through waivers. We're just kind of moving on from him, which is fine. He did win that Rookie of the Year award a couple years ago, but he's not a big-time hitter. He's horrible defensively, doesn't have any speed. He's a bench player. So we're going to give them Barley for Vasquez. And we'll try to get a little cash out of him too. Why not ask? Yeah, I'm glad we asked. They were going to throw in some money also. So we're going to move on from Barley, bring on Alex Vasquez as a rental, get a little cash in return. The fans are excited. And again, when we get the hit, when Vasquez leaves this offseason, I am not going to complain. We got a 9-point hit from him coming on board, though. So Palacios, or a 9-point benefit. Palacios was a 10-point hit. Vasquez is a 9-point hit. My only hope is that they're not quite as significant when they leave, but they should be hits when they leave. But this should help us definitely sell some tickets and, more importantly, make us a better team on the field this year. So I'm going to move Vasquez onto the roster. And now we're going to try to pull together a trade for Mr. Tomei, who I think would be another upgrade to our bench. And who knows, both of these guys could end up getting some time at first base or left field or DH against righties or lefties. We'll see what the manager wants to do when we have him on board. But between these two guys and Palacios, definitely have added a lot of experienced and accomplished veterans over the last month. And we can bring on Vinny Tomei, have to give up David Butler, who is a very middling relief prospect. He's 24 years old, only pitching an A-ball. He has been effective there this year with a 2.68 ERA, but certainly not a big-time prospect. He was our 20th round draft pick out of UCLA a couple of years ago, so not a player who's going to make a difference for us, I think, at the major league level, but Tomei may be able to come up with a big hit or two for us. Fans excited by the addition of Tomei, so we'll take a look at that. And we got a 5-point hit from bringing on Tomei, so fan interest is as high as it's ever been for us in this playthrough, but we've added 24 points to it this month with the additions of Palacio, Vasquez, and Tomei, all of whom will likely be leaving at the end of the season. So we are going to be back down in the 60 area, which is fine. Not going to get obsessed with fan interest, but nice to get the little bump here. So I would think that that gives us a pretty good chance of selling out most of our games the rest of the way. Have to make a spot on the 26-man roster. So we are going to move on from Mr. Valadares. Hopefully we can sneak him through to AAA. Certainly no guarantees. He refuses to be demoted. Well, actually, I don't think we're going to get much for him in trade, but even after we waive and DFA him, he'll refuse the assignment most likely. I can't imagine anyone's going to give us much of anything in terms of prospects for him, but it's worth checking at least. And of course, nothing there. So I don't think there's anyone else that we'd want to send down. No, Valadares is the guy. So we will go ahead and waive and DFA Mr. Valadares. That allows us to put Vinny Tomei onto the roster. And let's see what these lineups are going to look like now. I have no clue how much playing time these guys think they're going to be getting. It takes Ethan Fox out of the lineup, and he had been hitting decent for us, 295 batting average, over 122 at-bats. But they're all going to get playing time. Vasquez is a full-time DH. Tomei is a full-time first baseman. And then that pushes Palacio into a full-time third base role. I really question whether Palacio is going to stay healthy, given that he's wrecked physically. We are being aggressive in terms of resting him. Not that he's hit all that great for us, but still don't want to run the guy into the ground. But even takes Alfredo Velasquez out of the lineup, which is fine. I mean, he's had a couple really nice years for us, but he was a lot more valuable when he's hitting 223 and 244 than this year when he's barely above the Mendoza line. So the middle of our lineup looks very different with the additions of Vasquez, Palacio, and Tomei, or against lefties, Palacio, Vasquez, and Tomei are 4 through 6 hitters against both lefties and righties, with the addition of these veterans that we've brought on board. So I guess we're going for it. 8.5 behind the Cardinals, so going to be very tough to catch them for the division title. Up 7 on the wild card period, up 4.5 on Colorado for a home series. We'll play the last day of the month, and got a win against the Cubs. And Palacio, back stiffness. Yeah, that's going to be the issue, especially with him who's wrecked physically. We are going to be as conservative as we can be, place him right on the IL, and probably when he comes back, maybe mess around with the lineup a little bit to either get him in a DH role or just bench him potentially against left-handers or something and get Ethan Fox some at-bats, because I do think that him playing every day wrecked physically at this point in his career is just not going to work out that well. Fortunately, with bringing Vasquez and Tomei on board, we'll miss his bat a little less if he does get banged up, but certainly want to try to keep our players as healthy as possible. And to give us a little more flexibility in the infield, we're going to bring up Tony Toka, who we picked up as a minor league free agent signing beginning of this season. Not much of a hitter, but a real nice glove, good personality. Has been hitting 266 in AAA for us this year. If he doesn't make it through being waived and DFA'd, not the end of the world, but feel like he'll give us a little more defensive versatility with Palacio out now. And Ethan Fox will go back in and become our starting third baseman for the next 10 days or so till we get Palacio back. So I think that's fine. We'll move on to August and see where we are in the standings, and then we'll be back in our next episode to see if we can get this team into the playoffs, which it would be obviously a huge shock if we don't at this point. See if we can at the very least maintain that number 1 wild card position, so we will have a home playoff series. And then the stretch goal is clearly to close that 7.5 game gap on the Cardinals in the NL Central, which will definitely be difficult to do. Although we have the third best record in the National League, we're a lot farther from first than 4 teams in the mediocre NL East. So we're up 8 on the wild card, up 4.5 on the Rockies to be hosting the wild card game, and we've got 7.5 games to make up on Pittsburgh potentially, or on St. Louis potentially. We're Pittsburgh. 7.5 games to make up on St. Louis if we want to finally get past them for the NL Central title. So a 14-10 record when all was said and done in July. 8th in the league in runs scored, 5th in the league in runs allowed. I believe I said at the beginning of the year that if we're kind of in the top half in runs scored and the top handful of teams in runs allowed, those are kind of our goals. So we're basically right there right now. We're the fulcrum or the middle of runs scored in the National League, and we're either the pinky or the thumb, but we're still on the top handful of runs allowed at this point. Hopefully the starting pitching gets better over the end of the season. I feel like it should. It's the same guys who have done well for us for the last few years. Gonzalez is getting older, but Montoya is young. Gaona is the 5th starter. We don't have huge expectations of, but Longoria and Santana with a 3.80 and a 4.66 ERA. There's no other way to say it than they've been disappointing, and they both have losing records, even though they did both make the All-Star team. But I would expect those two guys to pitch much better down the stretch. And next off season, we may need to focus a little more on really reinforcing our defense. We didn't do much this offseason, as we've talked about, except for just bleed players. And notably, we did take a hit defensively moving on from Serrano at second base. But that move in and of itself, to me, shouldn't instantly make our defense worse, or our team defense so materially worse than it has been. So hopefully it's just been a little bit of bad luck with the pitchers so far. I mean, looking at Longoria, his BABIP is 335, which is as high as it's ever been in the majors, but not egregious compared to where he's been. Tony Santana with a 332 BABIP, though, that's 40, 50 points higher, 50 plus points, close to 60 points higher than he's been the last couple years. So I guess there is a thought that those guys have just gotten a little unlucky so far too. So I think we can be a even better pitching staff down the stretch with the fact that we've brought on a versatile all-star, a likely Hall of Famer, and in the case of the now injured Mr. Palacio, a undeniably first ballot Hall of Famer with a 135 career WAR and 5 MVP awards. We've got some bats, and we've got some bats off the bench even that we've never really had before with this team. With the pitching we've got, if the pitching straightens itself out, we've got some pinch hitters off the bench where I still think a decent team defensively. I think this team can get into the playoffs and do some damage, but we've got to stay healthy to make that happen. Hopefully we'll have Arellano back in a few days, have Palacio back in about a week and a half. We're going to be without Flores, but if we can get these two guys back in August and not suffer any crippling injuries, if somebody gets banged up for a week or two in August and September, it's not the end of the world. But if we are healthy at the end of our next episode as the playoffs begin, I think we've got a fighting chance to do something interesting with this team. So we will find out our progress towards that in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.